Uh, Good evening. Just getting set up. Trying to add somebody, a guest. Let's see if we can make that work. Uh, Give me a couple of seconds. Trying to see if they pop up. If they join. Oh, there we go. I think I got it. All right. Instagram, I think. All right. How are you?
Hi.
It worked.
How are you?
I don't know if I'm good. I don't know if it worked on the other Facebook or not.
Let me look for you.
It did you join the
Yeah, it's not letting my work page join for some crazy reason.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't. You mean you're okay, the work one, okay.
Yeah. Let's see. I sent a request to you. Do you have that?
You sent a request?
Yeah.
I didn't get no, I didn't get it. Let me exit out and then go back in maybe. Uh Not yet. We're trying to connect. So give me a minute, guys. We're trying to bring on a guest to the Facebook. And you know, yeah, I don't see it. So maybe we can get started. They'll be able to hear on my end, and but they won't be able to see you on the Facebook unless we can figure out how to get you on.
Can you hear me on this?
Yep, I can hear you on this.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Well, all right, guys. Well, we're gonna get started. Just want to double check to make sure there's nothing that I missed. All right, yeah, I don't see it. Okay, so, yep, okay. So, good evening, everyone. And good evening and to Dr. Zuckerman. Thank you for joining me on live today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
We're gonna have a great talk tonight. You know, tonight's talk is fitting, obviously, for what's going on in the world and the pandemic. We're gonna be talking about COVID-19 and how, you know, it affected you this past year, particularly as it relates to your mental and physical well-being. And so Dr. Zuckerman is a psychologist, and she's going to help us talk more about this. If some of you guys were on my live before, we had this conversation before, so I wanted to bring a professional on to really go into it and delve into it a little bit more. So thank you again for coming on. And I just wanted to start the conversation by asking you, Dr. Zuckerman, how has the pandemic in general affected you personally and professionally?
Sure. So I think it's safe to say that it has affected everybody negatively, including myself. Um, I'm sure we could find some silver linings in this, but for the most part, my schedule has been completely uprooted. I have 3 little kids under the age of 8. So they were in and out of school, and then they were home for months. And then I switched to seeing patients through telehealth. So I was
Yep.
seeing patients at home with 3 kids screaming in the background, hiding in my bathroom, in my car. So, it has had an effect professionally. I have found, though, that I'd say 90% of my patients crossed over to telehealth seamlessly. Interestingly, the ones with social anxiety disorder are the ones that didn't continue because the quarantine actually worked to their benefit. So they actually were okay.
Yes.
Because they didn't have to do anything or go anywhere. But generally speaking, I think, like everybody else, I miss the connection. I miss the human contact. I miss seeing people's faces. I miss being able to go to the market without having to worry. I play tennis a lot. I miss playing tennis. I mean, there's a lot of things that really were disrupted, and I feel bad saying that because there's loss of lives and all that, and everything's been uprooted, really.
Yeah. It was the same for me. When the pandemic first hit, we had to shut our offices down completely, and we went 100% telehealth, and that was a big shift because we hadn't done that before, and so it was a learning curve, and then when we finally went back in the office, we're not in the office full time because we don't want the waiting room to be packed. So we only allow for half of the physicians to be in the office at any one time. And so half my time I'm in the office, and then half the time I'm home seeing patients on telehealth. So it is a big adjustment. And so, but we're getting used to it, and so are the patients. And like you said, some patients actually enjoy being able to do the telehealth visits. So it's good. But one of the things is that, like, and I wanted to talk to you, wanted to get your opinion on a lot of this. Some of the things with that I'm hearing from my patients is about this COVID fatigue. They've been doing this for almost a year, and it's just wearing on them, and it's wearing on them, and it's wearing on a lot of us psychologically. And can you speak to that, and what would be some advice that you would give?
Sure. So I think it's different for frontline workers than, for people who are not actively working with patients. I worry very much that we are kind of at the cliff of a very large mental health crisis. If we weren't already at one, I think we're at one now. I think that, there is when you're treating patients and your job is to save their lives, when you have people coming in repeatedly that are on ventilators that are probably not going to come off, and that they're alone and they're dying alone and they're without their families, and you solely are responsible for being with that person during one of the most critical moments literally of their entire life, and that falls on you multiple times a day. There's going to be a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder that comes from this. There's going to be a ton of survivor's guilt that comes with this. I think also from, not being an essential healthcare worker, I think that there's a lot of guilt people feel. I have a lot of patients who will say to me, I have so much guilt. I feel so depressed. I feel so sad because I went outside and, took a walk, and there's people that are sick and dying and can't do this. So people are almost worried and upset and sad and feel guilty to put a smile on their face, to do something for themselves. The anxiety level is, if you didn't have anxiety before this and you don't have any now, I'm more concerned about that. I think it's healthy and natural and normal to have a little bit of anxiety because it keeps us safe. It keeps us motivated to stay safe. But I think there's a lot of, I'd say more so anxiety, but I think what you're going to see a lot with healthcare workers is a lot of post-traumatic stress, a lot of acute stress disorder. And I think over time, and I think we're seeing this now, there's just this emotional fatigue that's happening. It's just, it
Yes.
seems like it's never ending. And so it's very difficult to keep the end in sight because we have no idea what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting because, myself and my infectious disease colleagues would be in the hospital, and they're doing it way more than I am. And I've had many of them come to me and say, look, I'm having a tough time.
Yeah.
And it's I wanted to just like reemphasize your point that that anxiety can actually, in a way, be helpful because it keeps you safe, and because you're still vigilant about making sure you do the things that you're supposed to do. I really do think that it's okay to have a little bit of that anxiety because, like you said,
Oh, yeah.
it helps keep you on point.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it helps you take in information about your world around you. It keeps you aware of things that are
Yes.
happening and helps you interpret things.
Yes, it does. And sometimes I think we also get, unfortunately, numb to certain things because I remember when the numbers were so low that I was like, oh my God, I can't imagine it getting to 70,000. And, we're already 370,000 plus. And,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, 1,000 deaths a day. And now we're at 3,000 and 4,000 deaths a day. And after a while, this is the worst time of the pandemic and since it started. And, yes, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but people do need to realize that they still need to stay vigilant because it's going to unfortunately get worse before it gets better. And we need to, and because there are therapeutics, there's vaccines, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about that. But because there are things that will be able to help us get out of this, it's imperative now that we are more vigilant than ever. And I wonder what would be some of the suggestions you would have to try to keep people as motivated as possible to get through these next few months.
Yeah. So I think, one of the things that I tell patients and one of the things that I feel really strongly about is this idea of stop fighting the discomfort that you feel about this. This is a global pandemic. It's a really tragic situation. You need to sit with that and feel that. And strategies to help you sit and feel that discomfort rather than trying to fight it, ignore it, push it away will actually make the anxiety that you have less, less intolerable for you. People are scared to kind of feel anxious, but it's unavoidable in this situation. It's unavoidable to not feel loss and not feel sadness. Feel it, welcome it for what it is, and it will pass a lot sooner than if you're constantly struggling to fight against it. I think the other thing that really helps people is your support system and your support network. And because we're limited in terms of our abilities to connect with people, of probably within the one of the events where you require that the most, because there's so much going on right now and you want to be able to connect and get that support, and yet we can't. So I tell people really, use social media for the connection aspect of things, video chat, Zoom, all of those things. It's so important to maintain that because it's very easy to go, a couple days, a couple weeks and realize you haven't connected with anybody. Because as you said, we're kind of numb to this disconnect right now. And as human beings, we seek out connection. So this really goes against who we are as human beings.
Yeah, no, it is true. It's so true.
Yeah, the other strategy that I do recommend, like simple things like your sleep hygiene. It's super important for your mental well-being, but also your physical health to make sure you have a very good, consistent sleep regimen. And, again, little things like eating healthy. I know it sounds cliche, but it really does affect you in terms of inflammation, in terms of your mood, in terms of your sleep. So all of these things taken together can really help you kind of get through this, this time until hopefully it's past us.
Yeah, I tell patients, all the time in the beginning, people, it threw off your routine, right? So everything was different. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes people felt like, okay, I'll get back on my routine once this is all over. But it's still going on. It's been almost a year. And so, I try to tell my patients, like, you need to find a new routine in this situation, in this pandemic, because we still have several months before you're going to get back to any sense of normalcy. So you can't just, and you can't just, well, I'm going to sit on a couch and I'm going to do, like, you really need to, get your workout regime together. If you say you're going to do it at 1 o'clock, do it at 1 o'clock. Don't say, I can do it later. Like, really get on a routine and a schedule.
I think that is probably one of the key variables in maintaining your mood and maintaining your physical health, is that structure, because as you know, the way the brain works, it likes to be able to predict what's next. It likes to be able to predict what comes next, so it uses less cognitive effort and cognitive energy. So if we can kind of have a schedule, again, as simple as it sounds, it has big consequences. If we can avoid using as much cognitive effort as we can and just be able to predict what comes next, our anxiety is just naturally going to be lower, which again goes with blood pressure and heart, all of that stuff. So having a schedule is important. The other thing I recommend, and which I love that you said this, is our schedules have shifted so drastically. And if, everybody says, our new normal, but it kind of, it isn't a new normal because it's constantly in flux. So you don't want to get stuck in this, new normal, because day to day things are just changing. So it's important to keep that fluid rather than fixed, because if something changes and you're on this new normal, you're going to start to hit a wall. So take something that you do. If you do yoga, let's say, and you're used to taking 2 classes a week outside at a studio, you're going to have to modify that. It doesn't mean you have to get rid of it because you can't do it the way you used to. You have to modify it for kind of the world that we're in at this moment. That could change tomorrow. Right now, today, what can you put in your schedule that's so you still have yoga regardless, but what's going to fluctuate is the way you do that activity based on circumstances.
Yeah. We there's a lot of different, like, I work out in my home now, as opposed, and my regimen would be to, right after work, go right over to the gym. And that's different. And like you said, you have to modify it. And that's what we do. So, I think that's a good message to let people know, because we really do need to understand that we do need to be a little flexible and modify things. I wanted to, I did want to mention, and then there's a bunch of questions, but I did want to talk a little bit about the vaccines, because we hear all about them on the news, and the 2 vaccines that are out now are the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine. And as you know, frontline workers get it first, and the nursing home residents and employees get it first. And there's been, some people wonder about the vaccine and how quickly it was produced, but people need to understand that this technology has been out here for over a decade, and they were able to sequence the spike protein, which is what we're targeting, and able to make a vaccine pretty quickly. And some people are a little nervous about getting the vaccine, and I can tell you that until I got more information, I was nervous about getting the vaccine. But but when I read the data, I felt very confident about getting the vaccine. And people say, well, we don't want to be guinea pigs, or I don't want, and I remind them that the first guinea pigs are all the doctors, because we got it first. So that exactly. We are the ones who right. And if we felt confident enough to get it, you should at least think about it. And I don't know if you have any patients that comment about that, and what are your thoughts?
So I agree with you. I think that as far as people being guinea pigs, it's the physicians, it's the people that are, you know, responsible for your health. They know what they're talking about. I also think you have the ability to be more of an educated consumer of the research, let's say, than somebody who may not understand the data and may not be able to make sense of it until it's translated through other things. But I think it's a benefit that to you that doctors are able to understand this data and understand it from kind of a different standpoint, a different mindset. I understand people's concerns about the vaccine. I get it. I think the climate right now is very, just in general, is very unsettling, and there's a lot of misinformation that's given about everything, lots of things, and so I get that people are hesitant to believe things that they're told, especially in this time. So I think it's important to validate people's fears. I think it's important to validate, even if you don't agree with them, but validate their concerns, validate their fears, answer their questions as best as you can. Give them as much, I think information is power with this. The more information they have, I think the better of an informed decision they're gonna make. It's not gonna be opinion based. It'll be research and fact based.
Exactly.
And exactly. Yeah. And I think it's important to acknowledge that emotions are going to run high with this, and you're going to have a lot of disagreements even between family members. But at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you. And if we can't convince somebody to get it, then we can't convince somebody to get it. But, you know, I think information and validating their feelings and letting them know it's normal to be scared. It's normal to be, you know, sad about this, anxious about this. It's normal. And I also think, you know, with it being developed so quickly, I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's not so much the development of the actual vaccine took long. It's usually the red tape, the hoops that you have to jump through to get a vaccine to market. I think that's the part that was probably sped up, not the actual development of it itself. And so sometimes I think that would be helpful for people to hear too, that they didn't just rush through it and throw something together and inject it in your arm. So
yeah, no, they didn't. I think the vaccine itself was created quicker than you would normally. Sometimes it takes years for vaccines to be developed. So because of this technology, this mRNA technology, they were able to develop it quicker. But the actual studies went through the rigors of what it would be if it were a different, like any vaccine, the flu vaccine or whatever vaccine. And so that part, I think, is what made us feel confident, because you still got that 3-month data to see if there was, because with vaccines, if something's going to happen, it's going to happen within the first several months in general. And so so we have that data, and we have it. It's very clear. So I think that's why a lot of physicians felt confident and comfortable because of it. So, you know, again, like you said, everybody isn't going to get the vaccine. That's understandable. We encourage people to get the vaccine to help us get to a point where we can get that herd immunity, so that we can get back to some sense of normalcy. But like you said, it's understandable that people are reluctant. And then, you know, as time goes on, I think the people will feel more comfortable, and then they might change their minds. And nobody should pressure anybody to do anything. And so, but I think if you start, you know, just, you know, once you start looking at it, I think people will get more comfortable as time goes on. There were some questions. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think you'll end up with what we have now with other vaccines. There's, you know, the group of people that get them with, you know, no questions asked, a group of people who consider it for their new babies, but they end up getting it. And then the group that doesn't ever get vaccinated for anything. And, and those are the people that don't get this either. So I think majority of people will end up getting it again.
Yeah, I agree. There's some questions from the audience. One of them, I think you kind of answered. They were talking about they said they were having trouble sleeping at night, mainly trying to adjust to the new norm. Do you have any tips on how I can become less anxious and get proper rest?
So I'll start with the proper rest. Just a couple kind of housekeeping hygiene strategies that I like to give people. Simple things like you don't ever want to take a nap in your bed. If you're going to take a nap, it has to be somewhere completely outside that room. Nap on your floor, nap on your couch, nap in your kitchen. It doesn't matter. Just don't nap in your bed. The bed is for nighttime sleep only. You want to kind of refrain from eating a couple hours before bed. Make sure you don't eat any type of complex carbohydrates before bed because that can mess up your sleep cycle. And also just in terms of weight loss in general or weight gain in general, you want to make sure that you stay away from that. And you also, I know this is really difficult for everybody, but to try to stay, no naps in bed. You want to try to stay as best as you can away from your blue light. That means phone, iPad, TV, things like that. I'm horrible with this. As best as you can, let's say it should be 2 hours. I tell people an hour because I think sometimes even 15 minutes is hard. So I tell people gradually over time, start with 5 minutes, then 10, then 15, because if you start with an hour, you're not going to do it. It's just habitual at this point, and you don't want to set yourself up for failure. So start really small. I like to say insultingly small. So make it difficult for you to look at your phone. Put your phone across the room. That it actually means you have to get up and walk over to it. Put the remote in the bathroom so you actually have to get up and walk. So eventually, if you're too tired, it'll become a pain and you won't want to do it. There's also something to be said for people showering too close to bedtime. Because the change in body temperature can kind of rile you up a little bit from being cold to hot to cold. Same thing with working out. You want to make sure that you don't work out, I'd say maybe an hour or two before bed. You really kind of want to take that time to relax and regroup. If you do find yourself going to bed and you're laying there for about 15, 20 minutes and you can't fall asleep, the best thing to do is to get up out of your bed, walk into a different room. I often recommend the kitchen. Have a glass of water, have decaffeinated tea. And the only thing I tell people that they should be doing is reading of some sort. Not on your iPad, not on your Kindle, but just reading something, listening to music, but nothing with blue light for about 10 minutes, then get back up and go in bed. And you want to continue that for every kind of 20 to 30 minutes you can't sleep, because you don't want to associate your nighttime sleep and your bed with this kind of anxious thinking and this kind of wakefulness. And then as far as how do you feel less anxious? Well, it's a loaded question, but I'll give kind of quick tips. The first thing is I always say, feel it. You have to feel what you're feeling. By pushing it away, people say, I'm trying not to think about it. And I say, no, you have to think about it. It's impossible not to. For the simple reason, if I tell myself, don't think about the dog. In order to tell myself not to think about the dog, cognitively, I'm actually saying the word dog in my brain. So I have to think about it in order to not say it. So it actually is not possible to do that. So think what you're thinking, feel what you're thinking. You'll end up getting stuck with it less. And don't wait to do a behavior like your laundry, let's say it's piling up. Break it into insultingly small tasks. Just wash your white socks. And if that's too much, then just wash something that has less in it. And if you feel like you can't wait to feel like doing it in order to do it. You have to feel uncomfortable, feel scared, feel anxious, feel sad, and at the same exact time, do it anyway. That's why you have to start small, because it's not about completing the task. It's about developing that sense of mastery and the likelihood that you'll be able to do it again. So it's very important. People say, I'll do it when I feel like it, or I'll do it when I'm less tired. You got to do it first, and then the mood and the behavior change as a result.
Absolutely. That's great advice. I know we're getting late in the hour, and I did want to answer a couple of more questions that came up. One was, are there vaccines that are a single shot? And there are. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is being developed. It's a single shot. So if that gets approved, that will be a single shot. And there'll be others as well. Someone asked, if you already had COVID-19, do you still need to get the vaccination? And the recommendations are yes, because we don't know how long your immunity will last. And so if you've had COVID-19, you still should, and we recommend that you still get the vaccine. And that answered that question already. All right. Well, this was great. Did you have any other final thoughts you wanted to say, Dr. Zuckerman?
No, I just think, again, like I said in the very beginning, this is a very uncertain illness, uncertain course. You're going to be anxious. It is okay to not be okay. It's probably more normal than you realize. So just kind of not be okay, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I think that is the take home message. It is okay not to be okay. It's okay to understand, to have these feelings that you're getting fatigued. But what I would just urge everybody is to hang in there. You've made it this far. So, where at least there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We're not at the end of the tunnel, but there is at least a light now. And so if we can, just kind of get that second wind and keep going and, the 3 W's, wear your mask, watch your distance, and wash your hands, and until you get the vaccine or whatever, this is what we need to do, because it really is getting worse as we sit here tonight even. And so, but I want to thank you so much for coming on tonight. Please follow Dr. Zuckerman's social media. Can you give them your information? Your social media handle?
Yeah, my Instagram is dr period Z underscore psychologist. And I post a lot of things about, things that I was talking about tonight. And my website is drjamiezuckerman.com.
Great. And my handle for those who are new is Dr. Rameck Hunt across all social media. Rameck Hunt, and noguesswork.com is the website. So, Dr. Zuckerman, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have this conversation with you, and I wish you well and have a great week.
Yes,
All
you
right,
too. Thanks
you.
for having me.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.